The second Buff Divers patch has hit live servers, and Helldivers have never been more equipped with a better arsenal than what we have right now. We've all been playing on the first Buff Divers patch for about a month now, so we all know how great the game was feeling, and this second patch has not only doubled down on the buffs, but it's actually done some course correcting for some of the very few mistakes they made with that first patch, but more on that later. This patch is massive and mostly positive. As expected, there's always some standouts of the bunch that come out on top and prove to be the most effective choices a Helldiver could make. But sadly, there are also pieces of gear that just can't quite keep up with the rest of the herd and are seemingly neglected by Arrowhead. So, if you're looking to find out which of the buffed weapons are trending upwards in the meta and which ones are better left in the arsenal until a future patch, then you've found the video for you. My name is Easy, thank you for tuning in, and these are the biggest winners and losers of the second Buff Divers patch. We're gonna start this thing off on a high note with the winners. Keep in mind, these are not being ranked in any specific order because this isn't a tier list or a ranking video. I am planning on making those later, but for now, this is just all the gear that I personally believe benefited the most from this patch and are coming out on top as definers of the current meta. I did say that we're gonna kick this off with a high note, and this is perhaps the highest of notes in the entire patch. Those who have used it know what's coming. It's the Purifier. This gun is absolutely cracked out of its mind. This thing is S tier on both bugs and bots and is debatably the best gun in the game, period. It is just stupid how strong this thing is because it has a fire rate of however fast you can click. So if you're in a sticky situation, just spam the fire button as fast as you can, and I promise whatever was in front of you is now deleted. In this patch, Arrowhead gave the Purifier a whole slew of changes, but to keep it simple, they made it so that you can fire it without charging. This gives players the option to charge it for 1 second for a 100% damage multiplier plus other effects, or to fire it with no charge at all with a 50% damage multiplier. These changes took the Purifier from the worst gun in the game to the most broken one in the game, and that's not an exaggeration. This gun is quite literally broken right now because according to the patch notes, the charge time should be set at 0.1 seconds, but thanks to some of our bigger brained Helldivers out there, we know that the real in-game charge time is actually set at 0.01. So they put a 0 where it doesn't belong, resulting in an RPM of 1000 instead of the intended 600. First of all, this is just a hilarious coding mistake on this one, but I'm not complaining at all because this mistake has caused this weapon to be the absolute monster that it is right now. Realistically though, we aren't always spamming the weapon at a rate of 1000 rounds per minute, and I think if it got patched to its intended 600 RPM, it would function pretty much the exact same. Except we would lose the funny Purifier spam, which would be a tragic loss, because I love when things are overly goofy in this game. It's perfect. Real talk though, the Purifier is probably the most versatile primary we've ever seen in this game because you have the choice to either spam it like it's an SMG or fully charge it for higher damage, AoE, and stagger. The current rendition of this weapon is basically like if the Punisher Plasma and the Scorcher had a baby. The Purifier has the high fire rate and damage of the Scorcher, but if you choose to charge it, it gets even more damage, plus the AoE and stagger that the Punisher Plasma provides. If you're a longtime fan of my channel, and I mean a really long time, you'll know that the Scorcher and the Punisher Plasma are two of my personal favorite weapons in the game, so it's no surprise that I love this version of the Purifier. It quite literally does everything you want in a primary, and more. It's got medium armor pen at AP3, it has absurd range, it has AoE, it has stagger, it has high single target damage, and the list goes on. Hell, it can even kill chargers with just 3 to 4 fully charged shots, because if you aim below them, the AoE will smack their butts and eventually cause it to explode, which will bleed them out. Oh, and make sure you spam automaton dropships when they come in and watch everything get nuked and plummet to the floor. It's pretty funny. What we have right now in the Purifier is exactly what I was hoping for when I first saw it in the Polar Patriots trailer. It may have taken 5 months to get this weapon to a suitable state, but we have made it, and I'd say it was well worth the wait. Our next winners of the patch are Sentries, and I mean all of them. The machine gun, Gatling, Autocannon, and Rocket Sentry all got buffs, and reminder, this is in addition to their buffs from the first Buff Divers patch. So these bad boys have gotten buffed twice in the last 2 patches alone, leading to these things being absolute maniacs on the battlefield. And I don't mean maniacs because they sometimes take your head off, but I call them maniacs because these boys are killing machines. Both the machine gun and Gatling sentries got increases to their magazines, reduced cooldowns, and as compensation for the reduced cooldown, they also have reduced lifespans. The rocket and autocannon sentry were left out of the magazine buffs, but did get the reduced cooldown and lifespan change. So not much is different in the damage department, but damage has never been an issue with sentries. It's always been their uptime, in my opinion. It feels really bad to throw down a sentry, watch it run out of ammo in 1 minute, then be on cooldown for another 2 minutes, resulting in you basically being down an entire stratagem slot for long periods of the game. That no longer happens. With these reduced cooldowns, the longest sentry cooldown comes in at 2.5 minutes, and that isn't even factoring the reduced cooldowns from module slots or the fact that they all have increased ammo and increased damage from previous patches. Now when you use sentries, you have all the uptime in the world, especially if you choose the machine gun sentry, which has just a 90-second cooldown. Seriously, if you're looking to round out your loadout with extra firepower, the MG Sentry is 100% going to be a top tier choice. With its absurdly low cooldown, you'll be able to have this guy for almost every fight you get in, and it'll always be up when you need something to watch your back during objectives. And when it comes to the other sentries, with just 2.5 minute cooldowns, you've got these guys for literally every major fight you get in. I'm not exaggerating here. They've got long enough uptime to support you through any major fight, and by the time that fight is over, you've got a new one ready to call in for the next skirmish that happens. In the past, I was always reluctant to take any sentries because it really did feel like you played a majority of the game down a stratagem slot. But trust me, if you still have any reluctance to throw a sentry in your loadout, don't. This patch, I've been loving rounding out my loadouts with a sentry. If my team is missing heavy firepower, I'll throw in an autocannon or a rocket. If we're missing horde clear, I'll throw in an MG or a Gatling. Sometimes I'll even toss multiple sentries in and play some balloons tower defense. I've always been a fan of sentries in this game, even when they weren't the best, but now they're at their peak, and I heavily recommend giving each and every sentry a try. I promise you won't be disappointed. Next up on the list of winners, we've got the Autocannon. The Autocannon being on the buff list definitely wasn't on my bingo card. This weapon was already a fan favorite, being one of the most consistent and best weapons since launch. It has been a staple in Helldiver loadouts since the day the Second Galactic War began. So the fact it's not only on the patch list, but got such a substantial change that it can be considered one of the big winners of the patch should tell you all you need to know. That it's goated. The Autocannon now has programmable ammo, which allows Helldivers to switch between normal projectiles and flak projectiles, which are proximity trigger. Who am I kidding? Why am I even reading this? If you're an active Helldiver, you know of this change, have already used it, and are even more deeply in love with the Autocannon than you were before. Previously, we all know the Autocannon was one of the best single target damage weapons in the game. It has never been a true anti-tank weapon, but at worst, it was serviceable against many heavy units and absolutely deadly to anything medium and below. But now, with the programmable flak ammo, it doesn't just shine in single target damage. The Autocannon now doubles as a horde clear weapon. If it wasn't already the most flexible and consistent stratagem on both fronts, this change surely cements it as such. It's one of the very few weapons in the game that can literally do everything. Need to take down armor units? It's got you covered. Horde of bugs coming your way? Flak ammo tears through them like butter with just a couple of shots. This thing is an absolute monster and is easily one of the top stratagem weapons in the game, and considering its extreme versatility, this is a weapon that you don't have to think twice before equipping. You can fill both an anti-heavy role and a horde clear role at the same time, which cannot be undervalued. The current rendition of the Autocannon isn't just strong, it is borderline unfair for the enemies, which is how it should be. Keep this shit coming, Arrowhead. We love it. Next up on the list of winners, let's talk about everyone's favorite secondary, the Big Iron, aka the Senator. There really isn't much that needs to be said about this thing. It's a secondary weapon that has an armor penetration value of 4. There is no other secondary in the game that has an AP value of 4. In fact, there isn't even a primary in the game that has an AP value of 4. Well, actually, there is one primary that has AP 4, which is the Torture, but considering it's a flame weapon, it doesn't really function in the same way that projectile-based penetration does. Anyway, the fact that the Senator, a secondary weapon, has higher armor penetration than all other primaries and secondaries in the game is absolutely wild. The mere existence of this weapon allows for so much more diversity when it comes to selecting a primary weapon, because you can pick any light pen weapon without feeling like you're missing out and getting cucked by armored up units. The Senator has got you covered for those guys. I will say there is one caveat, which is that it only does 200 damage per shot, meaning that it's not going to be soloing Chargers or Bile Titans. It can damage them, but with only 200 damage per shot, and considering that most heavy units have the same armor as this gun has pen, it is going to take much longer to kill them than you're hoping. Realistically, the Senator is going to be your choice for medium tier units. I'm talking Hive Guards, Rocket Striders, and units of that caliber. Although, it can 4-shot Hulks to the face, which is pretty funny and incredibly useful on the bot front. All in all, this patch makes the Senator a far more competitive weapon. In the past, I think it was more of a novelty, and in my opinion, nothing was really competing with the grenade pistol. But with this patch, you've got a real choice to make when it comes to selecting your sidearm, and the Senator might just be the best of them. Next up, and I promise we're almost done here with the winners, we've got the Jump Pack. I simply could not make this video or do any video talking about the patch without bringing up this thing of beauty. Jetpacks in literally any video game or any form of media are my favorite thing ever, so the fact that the Helldivers 2 Jump Pack has been awful for so long has actually made me depressed. I've lost sleep over it. And you want to know the saddest part? We got completely edged by Arrowhead when they added the Dark Fluid Jump Pack for the Meridia missions. These things had insane jump height, insane thrust, damaged enemies below you, had an insanely low cooldown. Man, what a great time that event was. And then it was over. Meridia got cooked into a black hole, and we have never seen the Dark Fluid Pack since. Us Helldivers went back to using the awful Jump Pack. Well, that's a lie. I said we went back to using it, but nobody was actually using it because it was trash. But now, the Jump Pack is living up to the glory and the potential that I always believed it could. Arrowhead cooked up and lowered the cooldown from 20 seconds to 15, and gave it a stronger thrust force, giving more forward momentum and a higher initial jump. Although a 5-second cooldown doesn't sound like much, the difference is very noticeable, but the real impact is in the thrust force. You are truly flying with this Jump Pack. We are seeing so many Helldivers across the galaxy fulfill their Mandalorian dreams. It's a thing of beauty. There isn't really much more that needs to be said here. What you see is what you get. It's a Jump Pack. It'll bail you out of sticky situations and give you more tempo on the map by allowing faster movement. Although, I will say, I really want Arrowhead to consider allowing us to aim while in the Jump Pack animation. Imagine equipping a grenade launcher and raining hell on your enemy as you jump over them. That would be absolutely peak. But I'm not going to allow my wildest Helldiver fantasies to spoil this fantastic change. If you haven't yet, go equip the Jump Pack and have a blast, because that's exactly what this bad boy provides. Pure fun. Finally, my last pick on the list of winners has got to be Heavy Armor. As many of you know, the last Buff Divers patch had one critical error when they basically turned all Helldivers into potato chips. We were getting one-shot by quite literally anything and everything. Death times were at an all-time high, but people forgave this mistake, knowing that changes would be coming. And with this second Buff Divers patch, the prophesized changes have arrived. This patch made heavy and light armor more effective, giving a 5% buff to heavy armor and an 8% buff to light armor. These numbers may sound small, but they're having a huge impact, especially for heavy armor. For much of Helldivers' life, heavy armor has been pretty disappointing, but this may be the first time since launch that we can say that heavy armor is the best option out of the three. Of course, I'm generalizing here. Armor choice is entirely up to the player and is dependent on loadouts, playstyles, and the enemy you're fighting. But at least on the bot front, I've pretty much only ran heavy armor since the patch, and it's going to be staying that way. There isn't much that needs to be said here, other than that heavy armor finally feels significantly more tanky than medium and light choices. I personally believe it is worth taking the decreased move speed and stamina for the return of surviving a little longer. Oh, and since I haven't mentioned it yet, of course this solved the one-shotting issue. Even in light armor, we aren't getting absolutely deleted by one automaton bullet now, but with heavy armor, you do feel a little tanky. It's not exactly the fantasy that I envision when I picture heavy armor. I'd still love to see it truly fulfill that tank role in the future, but for now, this is the change we get, and I'm happy with it. It's a huge win for heavy armor, and a massive step forward. Alright, so I did say we were done with the winners list, but I do have two very quick honorable mentions before getting to the losers. General Brash is a winner. According to the patch notes, he has returned from his holiday retreat. As a veteran Helldiver, I salute General Brash for being brave enough to take a holiday vacation during this perilous time in the war. He very much deserves the vacation, and I, for one, am proud to hear of his return. Jokes aside, our real honorable mention is that resupplies now show up on the damn map. Hallelujah! Thank you, Liberty. Nobody is talking about this change, but it is probably my favorite of the patch. Good work, Arrowhead. We have been begging for this since launch, and now we've got it. The game is at its peak. Let's go, boys. Alright fellas, now that we've looked at all the great highlights and winners of this patch, we've got to take a look at some of the losers of the patch. And I know what you may be thinking, if there were no nerfs in this patch, how are there any losers? Well, my fellow Helldiver, I am classifying the losers as weapons or stratagems that got changed, but didn't get changed enough. If that doesn't make any sense, I promise it will when we get into the list, and luckily, this patch is so great that there are only 3 losers, so I'll make it quick to get you on your way and get you back onto the front lines where you belong. Our first loser is going to be the Airburst rocket launcher. Do I need to say anything about this piece of trash? The only change it received was that it got a shorter reload duration from 7 to 5 seconds. It actually also got a stealth buff, which essentially doubled its damage from 250 per bomblet to 500, but it just isn't enough. Oh, also Arrowhead, can you guys please stop with the stealth changes? That would mean a lot, thank you. Anyway, this is a weapon that since release has been scraping the bottom of the barrel, and a shorter reload time is not fixing that. The Airburst seems like it's in limbo because it's a horde clear weapon that still has a long ass reload and takes up a backpack slot. I don't need to be the one to tell you, but those aren't good things. At best, you're killing 10 to 15 small units with a single shot, then you have to sit down to reload. In all that time, you could have just equipped a grenade launcher, which doesn't take up a back slot, doesn't have to sit to reload, has more ammo, and can fire off an entire mag before the Airburst can even reload once. The same can even be said about the new Autocannon flak. With the existence of that, why would you ever use the Airburst? I'll answer, you shouldn't. This weapon does not have a role in Helldivers 2, and considering the nothing burger change it just got, I think Arrowhead is content with allowing this weapon to just be the garbage meme gun, which I'm totally fine with because I have no idea what they should do with this weapon either. The sad reality is that the Airburst was just fundamentally a weak concept in the first place. I can't see this weapon ever finding a good place in the meta. Our second loser is the machine gun stratagems, and yes, I'm talking about all 3, the HMG, the MG, and the Stalwart. All 3 of these weapons received buffs, but none of them were directly to their damage. They were things like ergonomics and mag size, and simply put, these buffs aren't enough to keep these weapons competitive. I think when everyone saw that the Stalwart was getting a buff, we were all hyped, and even now, the Stalwart is in my opinion one of the most fun weapons in the game, but that doesn't mean it's good. Both the Stalwart and MG are functionally horde clear weapons, but neither of them do the job particularly better than anything else in the game. I'd even argue that a lot of primary weapons can perform horde clear duties better than these 2 can. Not to say that they're terrible, because they are useful, but they're losers of the patch, simply because even with these buffs, they're falling significantly behind everything else. I'm confident that one day we'll get proper buffs for these weapons, but this patch was not that day. Oh, and for the HMG, I just need to say one thing about it. The goddamn Senator can kill a Hulk faster and in fewer shots than the HMG can. That's all you need to know. It is a sad state for the Helldiver MG family. Last, and definitely least, is our third and final loser. We've got the Shield Generator Relay. This guy got a whole slew of buffs like increased charge rate and a much larger radius, but they also snuck in a nerf. The shield will no longer regenerate after being taken down. For some context here, this stratagem has never been good. It's always been something that people just take as a joke on an asset defense mission, but nobody is seriously building loadouts and strategies around this thing. But if it got proper changes, I think people seriously could. Unfortunately, the fact that the shield no longer regenerates after being taken down makes this stratagem completely useless, because it's only good against bots, and a lot of the bot units can outright one-shot your shield bubble, and once it goes down, well, it ain't going back up. So this is just an awful change all around. On top of that, it is way too short of an uptime. I haven't timed it myself, but it feels like it's less than 30 seconds, maybe 45 if we're being generous, and honestly, that is way too short considering it doesn't even regen after going down. There isn't much more that needs to be said. This stratagem was already F tier, and now it doesn't even deserve a spot on an A tier list. It's that useless. I hope that one day they can make it useful, because again, I do believe this thing could provide value to a team if it was given the right buffs, but these changes feel like Arrowhead just made changes for the sake of making changes and called it a day. Alright, that concludes our very short list of losers. I'll have a little recap on the screen if you need it. Feel free to screenshot it too if you want to remember these, and give a try to some of the winners, because if you haven't yet, seriously, trust me, everything in my winner list is absolutely cracked. I am having so much fun with this gear. Also, as a reminder, this is just my list. I tried to limit myself here because honestly, almost everything besides those 3 losers are winners in this patch, but I didn't want to turn this into a patch recap, so I threw together my personal picks for best changes so that you could give them a go in your Helldives. Oh, and of course, I want to hear from you guys, so please head down below and tell me what is your favorite weapon or change in this patch. That's about it for me. I've got a lot more Helldivers content planned, so drop a sub if you enjoyed this, because trust me, there are a lot of new videos on the way that you don't want to miss. I appreciate you for making it till the end. Seriously, I do. I know how busy everyone's lives can be, so the fact that you chose to spend some of your time listening to me yap really means a lot. Take care of yourself, and until next time, see ya!